It was a tough weekend for the Louisville women's basketball team as their season ended at the hands of the South Carolina Gamecocks in the Final Four. We'll talk about that contest and more on this episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Let's get right on into it.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by StatHero. StatHero is reshaping the way that you play fantasy sports with dozens of house-based games to play daily. No sharks, no funky props, just your skill versus the lineups you choose. Sign up today at stathero.com/lockedon. As always, I want to take this time to personally thank you for making us your first listen of the day. And just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast is free on all streaming services, 5 days a week, your team every day. As I mentioned, a tough weekend for the women's basketball team as they lost in the Final Four to the South Carolina Gamecocks. We will talk about everything you need to know from that matchup and how the Gamecocks executed a very solid game plan against the Cardinals. We will also give some shout outs to the three departing seniors, Emily Engstler, Kianna Smith, and Chelsie Hall. And then finally, we'll talk about the recent phenomenon from a portion of the Louisville fan base that has decided to bash head coach Jeff Walz after the Final Four loss. We'll talk about why you should not do that in the final segment. But we'll start out talking about the game as a whole. The Cardinals lost 72-59, and for South Carolina, it was all about hitting the Cardinals early on. Went on an 11-2 run to start the game. Aaliyah Boston got going early. They got some great guard play from, Destiny Henderson, Zaya Cook, so on and so forth. It was a little bit – I don't think that there was one trend throughout the game because I think that, even when it seemed like the Gamecocks were going to pull away and this was going to be a blowout, Jeff Walz's team came right back and kept it competitive. When they went down 11-2, they ended up battling back to tie the game up at 26. At the sort of toward the end of the second quarter, South Carolina, I think, went on like a 6-0 run to end the quarter. Ended up going up by 15 at one point in the third, and then Louisville was able to cut the lead to 9 by the end of that quarter. And then at that point, it was just a matter of not being able to really claw your way back in. Shout out to South Carolina. I will say this, there's a good portion of the fan base out there that wants to talk about officiating and stuff like that. And we will. We'll talk about that here in just a second. But I do first want to give credit to Dawn Staley and the South Carolina Gamecocks. I feel like what they set out to do, they did it successfully. That was make life tough for Haley Van Lith on the offensive end. They put a big defender on her, and I think it was Bree Beal that played defense on Haley Van Lith, really made it tough for her, kind of, fought through every ball screen. So when Haley did get the ball in the little curl that she likes, they were very adamant on contesting that shot, got a couple of blocks. And it wasn't the greatest game for Haley, but ultimately I think that, South Carolina did well in that area. They used their length and athleticism to really disrupt the Cardinals on both ends of the court. They made it their mission at times, and they shied away from it a bit, but for the most part, they went to what has worked all year long, and that is getting the ball in Aaliyah Boston's hands. The National Player of the Year had over 20 points and 20 rebounds, which, 6'5", it's very tough to guard that. And, she made the Cardinals pay all over the court. I will say, though, to be fair, and I'm never one to blame a game or a loss on officiating, even when, Louisville men's basketball took on North Carolina and the whole Armando Bacot flop and the technical foul saga and stuff like that. I didn't blame the game on officiating. I'm not going to do that here. But what I am going to say is I'm going to acknowledge it because, I'll be honest. I don't think that the statistics really kind of captured the picture. South Carolina did take 10 more free throws, and Louisville only committed 6 more fouls. But at the end of the day, for Aaliyah Boston to defend a lot of post action from Olivia Cochran and even Liz Dixon at times, and Emily Engstler to end up with 0 fouls. I thought that South Carolina got away with some travels, with some over the back fouls that were not called. I'm not ultimately saying that it was the cause for the loss, because it wasn't, because the Cardinals at the end of the day shot the ball 1 for 8 from behind the arc. They were very, very rushed on offense. They committed 15 turnovers. Field goal percentage wise, I mean, they shot 43% from the field, which only about 4% less than the South Carolina Gamecocks. But, excuse me, I don't know why I always get the hiccups during these shows. But regardless, I think that it's one of those, it was a perfect storm of things. Haley Van Lith struggled. And like I said, I couldn't really find her shot. She did score in double figures, however. She didn't score. She had 9 points and 9 rebounds. Emily Engstler scored 18 points, 9 rebounds, and what a performance from her. I felt like Emily Engstler and Kianna Smith, who had 14. Olivia Cochran was big as well, 14 points. I mean, those three together really, really kept the Cardinals in this game. The hustle plays, they were able to kind of bring Louisville back to playing in its identity, which is, relentless hustle and, unparalleled work ethic and stuff like that. So, seeing Emily Engstler cry after she fouled out on that fifth foul with about 4:50 left in the fourth quarter, immediately getting emotional. And I think that kind of epitomizes the passion and the work ethic that these players played with, not only this game, but all season long. So looking back on it, wrapping up the season, the Cardinals end the year in the Final Four, 29-5 final record. It's a tough one. I'll say I'm a little bit disappointed. I had a feeling that we would lose to South Carolina. I didn't make a prediction because I felt like, Louisville had the pieces to pull off the upset. And at the end of the day, the better team won. South Carolina is the best team in the country. And this is being recorded at 9:40 on a Sunday night. And right now, South Carolina is winning the national championship. At the moment, I'm not saying UConn can't come back. I'm just telling you what's happening in the current sense of when this is being recorded. But it was a tough go, especially being that close and really desperately wanting to get over that hump and win the first national title in program history. Unfortunately, it wasn't the Cardinals' year. I think that they handled business. They beat who they should have beaten throughout the season. And then throughout the tournament, they handled business against Albany and Gonzaga. They took down Tennessee. They held off Michigan. And then when it got to South Carolina, there were points in the game in which I thought they played pretty well. Unfortunately, they didn't necessarily put together the consistent performance to where they were getting things going for 40 minutes. It was really more along the lines of maybe like 15 or so. And that's kind of the way it is, unfortunately. South Carolina, credit to them, credit to Dawn Staley and company for drawing up a game plan that really made Louisville work for things and get them out of their rhythm. I thought that the Cardinals missed some wide open layups. They missed some opportunities to get back in this game or even to go ahead. But Louisville never once led in this game, I don't believe. Actually, hold on. They may have. I don't want to say that and be wrong, so I do need to go and check that. So Louisville led by 3 in this game, and they took a 3-point lead just for South Carolina to go on like a 5 or 7-0 run. And that's kind of the way it is and the way South Carolina is. They have a ton of depth. They have a ton of athleticism, size, length, and it really makes things tough for, a team that relies a lot on playing quick because, you can only mask over lack of size for so long. And I'm not saying that Louisville didn't have size, but I think it's more so the fact that South Carolina had an abundancy of size, with Aaliyah Boston, their best player, being 6'5". So it was a pretty solid season. I mean, anytime you go to a Final Four, I think it's a great year. We're going to talk about why Louisville fans just really need to be grateful, for lack of better terms, and not, try to deliver a hot take just for the sake of delivering a hot take. But I won't go into that too much. I do want to give a shout out to the departing seniors, Emily Engstler, Kianna Smith, Chelsie Hall, and talk about the contributions those players have made to this program respectively. We'll do that here in just a second after we talk about our friends and the title sponsor of the show, StatHero. March Madness ends tonight. The Kansas Jayhawks taking on the North Carolina Tar Heels. I don't know if you all have had any luck in your brackets. Mine was pretty much shattered in the first weekend. So If that happened to you, trust me, I feel your pain. But you have a chance to play a single game pick'em from StatHero. It pits the star players against each other in an amazing hybrid. You can take control back from those handicappers that always seem to have the advantage. In addition to the pick'em games, they also have dozens of lineups you can comb through to take on head-to-head. It's the easiest and fastest way to get your sports action fix. And simply, StatHero was kind of what daily fantasy was meant to be. So you can sign up for free right now at stathero.com/lockedon and use the promo code LOCKEDON for a 100% deposit match. Once again, that's stathero.com/lockedon while using the promo code LOCKEDON for a 100% deposit match. Also want to take this time to remind you how appreciative I am of you all making Locked On Louisville your first listen of the day. And just a reminder, the show can be found free on all streaming services, including YouTube, 5 days a week, your team every day. The trio of Cardinals leaving the program, and Emily Engstler, Kianna Smith, and Chelsie Hall will be extremely missed. We'll talk about the first one to start out with. Emily Engstler led the team, rebounds, steals, blocks, averaged 11.9 points, 9.4 rebounds, 2.3 assists, 2.7 steals, 1.8 blocks per game, respectively. And I'll be honest, I think that the only thing I regret about this season, about having Emily Engstler as a Cardinal, is the fact that we only got 1 year as Emily Engstler as a Cardinal. Seeing the emotion that she played with, and we saw the passion and the emotion that she showed in that press conference after the Elite Eight, and she got a little choked up and had some tears when we talk about Jeff Walz and the role that he's played in this season. And then we saw the immediate emotional reaction when she fouled out with 4:50 left in the fourth quarter. And I think I can speak for the fan base when I say that we all felt that emotion. We all felt that, there was like a hole, like a pit in your stomach, and you felt sick to your stomach, or at least I did. I guess I can't necessarily speak for the whole fan base, but it was a tough thing. It was a tough pill to swallow because it's been such a joy watching Emily play this season. She is 1,000% the best player, the best defensive player in college basketball. What she was able to do, the impact that she had on this team on the court, on both ends of the court, whether it was the pick and roll game on offense or, the pick and roll game on defense, being able to switch and guard 1 through 5, and being a rim protector that maybe Louisville hadn't necessarily had since Kylie Shook. I think that her impact, if this is the stat sheet right here, it goes way beyond the stat sheet. And I think that the only emotion that I have is gratitude now. But I think her impact off the court might, or maybe it's still on the court, but it's not necessarily from a basketball sense. The swagger, the New York style toughness that she played with, that she carried herself with, that she unapologetically represented this university with. I think it trickled down. I think that take no shit mentality, it trickled down to this team, and it got to the way this team was scared to play no one. I'm not saying they ever have been or ever will be, but you could definitely tell it was a relentless, hey, we are not backing down. And I just think that the highs and lows of the season, Emily Engstler being there for it all, I'm so glad that she chose to come here for as a grad transfer. The other grad transfer, Chelsie Hall, maybe not necessarily lighting it up stat sheet wise. She averaged 6.8 points per game, 1.5 steals, 3.1 rebounds, 2.1 assists. Ultimately, I think that she had some solid moments here at Louisville. There were some times where she maybe not necessarily didn't leave that huge of an impact in the box score, but she had some big-time plays. I think back to some of her most clutch performances, and I think that that's kind of the one thing Chelsie Hall did. It was, bring a ton of leadership, maturity, and poise to that point guard position. She recognized that, hey, I'm not the number 1 nor number 2 starter, so I'm going to play very good defense, and I'm going to try to facilitate the ball and get us some open shots. And I thought that she did that in a very unselfish way, and that has to be recognized. But I think one thing that has really stepped out to me about her was her ability to make plays in clutch time. I think back to the Kentucky game in December. She made some big-time plays. The three-pointer that she hit down in Coral Gables against Miami on February 1st, that was huge. I mean, we talk about the 3-for-3 in the first half against against Michigan in the Elite Eight, but she's made some very, very big-time plays, and I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to her as well, because I think that she played a bigger role than people want to give credit for, just because it didn't necessarily reflect in the box score. So shout out to Chelsie. Wish her the best of luck as well. The third departing senior who, unlike the other two, has been here for 3 seasons, transferred in, and I think she had to sit her first year. Is that right? I could be completely wrong. Yeah, she had to sit her first year after transferring from Cal. Came here, and I told people I had an open letter to Louisville women's basketball for Cardinal Sports Zone, and I think I used the term Kianna came here as a possible key rotational piece, and she left as a Louisville legend and an 1,000-point scorer. From a place where she averaged, just under 10 points a game both years at Cal. She came into Louisville in 2020 and 2021 that season, averaged 11.4 and shot the ball really, really well from the field and from behind the arc. I think that she had some moments this year to where she maybe not necessarily played up to her level, but ultimately I thought she had a great year as well for this season. The fact that she wasn't even an all-ACC honorable mention is absolutely egregious. It is unacceptable, and it's unexplainable, unjustifiable, if you will. But her ability to come in to a team that had Dana Evans and incorporated Haley Van Lith and some other players that got some minutes as well. I think that she did really well with accepting her role and being able to not only shoot the ball well, but also create her own shot. I am very, very happy that she came here as well. All 3 come in as transfers, and all 3 will leave as some Louisville favorites over the past handful of years. Kianna, in particular, she's another player that I wish would have came here for her first season, and but unfortunately, sometimes that's not how things work. You just have to deal with what you have. It's 2 great years with Kianna here. There's no doubt in my mind that she has a future in the WNBA. Should she wish to pursue it. Like I said, I think that the overwhelming emotion that I have for these 3 departing seniors is just gratitude for everything that they brought to the table. Their leadership, jumped off the page, and you don't see that in the stat sheet, but them being able to be the calming presence on the court, off the court, being poised, having that maturity and being, staples of the community and, pillars of this program and representing what this program stands for. You can't necessarily ask for a better trio of leaders. So definitely appreciate them. But I'll be honest, we also need to appreciate Jeff Walz. And for the most part, people do. There is a sector of the fan base, however, that has taken to completely bash him since the team's loss. We're going to talk about why you should not do that here in the next segment after we talk about our friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number 1 source for all of your sports betting needs and info. Find all the latest sports developments, including this week's Masters Championship odds, podcasts, and reviews for all the different leagues this season. It's your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. Head to the website or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline is where the game starts. Look, after the loss on Friday evening, I went on Twitter, and I'm like, I just want to see gratitude. And for the most part, I saw that. I just, the loss is already hard enough. I don't want this fan base to turn on each other or anything. I saw a good sector of the fan base, and it's probably a small portion of the fan base, so it doesn't really reflect the mainstream line of thinking or the majority or anything like that. But it was enough to make me think, okay, I've got to address this, because I don't agree at all. And of course, I'm talking about the ideology. I'm not saying that this is for what's being said, but to essentially summarize what some people are saying is Jeff Walz is a coach that can't win the big game. He's been knocking on the door a handful of times, but has fallen short, throughout his career here at Louisville. They go on to essentially bash him for that fact, calling him a regular season coach and stuff like that. And it doesn't matter how much success you have if you can't win it at the end of the year. Essentially just going down the line of why, trying to discredit what Jeff Walz has done since he took over this program in 2007, so on and so forth. And let me just say, I could not disagree anymore with those statements, with that line of thinking, because I will. Let me first introduce this. I will say on 93.9, Dave Skull and Chrissy Banta have quite possibly the greatest women's basketball postgame show that I've ever witnessed. Both part of the Crunch Zone, the Crunch Zone pod, thecrunchzone.com, and now the postgame show this year. They have done a great job of breaking down each and every game, being critical when needed, but also, being fair to coaches. And Dave, who is at Biggest Biscuit on Twitter, if you don't follow him, definitely give him a follow. He tweeted out yesterday, and I quote, "If a men's coach came in here meaning Louisville, and went to 11 Sweet 16s, 7 Elite 8s, and 4 Final Fours in 15 years, you would all be ecstatic. It's actually you all that had the double standard. That's a fact. You're trying too hard to have a hot take." And he goes on to say, "Jeff Walz isn't above criticism, and the women's players are not above reproach. In fact, we did a lot of criticism and questioning all year long on the postgame show, especially after losses. So I don't know. Tune in. Literally, the only thing Walz in this program has not done is win a title. He puts us in position to have a shot on the regular. It's going to happen." And this, my friends, all of those that are listening, is the correct take on this whole debate. Because there's not as much parity in women's college basketball as there is men's. Men's, I think that, if you have a team repeat in a select, decade, that's a hell of a team. That's a hell of a program. Since 2012, so go back the past decade, including this year as well. So I guess you could say, the past 10 tournaments, because 2020 wasn't played. Since 2012, when Baylor went 40-0, 5 teams have won a national title. 5 teams have won a national title. Now, listen to this. Sorry. UConn, South Carolina, if South Carolina won last night, obviously it's not playing. UConn and Baylor are the only teams to have won it multiple times, and UConn's won it 4 times in a row, from 13 to 16 with Breanna Stewart. Baylor has won it twice. Notre Dame won it in 2018. I'm trying to say this respectfully, because I respect the fact that you have criticism, and like I said, I think Dave said it best. We're not saying that Jeff Walz does not deserve criticism. We're not saying that, the players don't deserve some criticism, because I think that South Carolina executed a better game plan against Louisville. But make no mistake about it, in the Final Four, the Gamecocks were nearly a 10-point favorite over the Cardinals. I think that that's more so, epitomizing the fact that South Carolina was the best team in the country. They are the best team in the country. So I will say that to say this. You look back at the opening years of the Walz era. UConn had a run unlike any other program's run in NCAA history outside of the UCLA teams with Bill Walton and Lou Alcindor, also known as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. UConn Let me go back and, they had from 2013 to 16. They also won it 2009, 2010. And then you had Baylor going 40-0 and Brittany Griner in 2012. If you say that he can't win the big game, I guess you must just not have watched 2013 when they beat Baylor as one of the biggest underdogs in sports. Or beaten Tennessee the time after. Or beaten Cal in the Final Four. Or getting to the Final Four. Because you still have to beat good teams to get there. The fact that we've gotten to the point where greatness is expected so much to the point to where a sector of the fan base believes that that is not enough. And let me explain to you all how hard it is to win a national title, especially when you have these programs that you're going up against. It took Dean Smith. It took Mike Krzyzewski. It took some of these coaches 4 or 5 times, 4 or 5 Final Four appearances just to win a national title. It is not easy. Will Jeff Walz get there? Of course he will. If for some reason we get to the end of Jeff Walz's career here at Louisville down the road and he has not won a national title, maybe then can we have a conversation. We cannot have a conversation in 2022 about Jeff Walz not being the right man for this job. I have to voice my disagreement with that take because I'm getting a little frustrated because I feel like we're trying to discredit greatness. I feel like we're trying to discredit greatness by saying he's not a big game coach. Mind you, the only time in the Final Four that we can go back to and think Louisville should have won it that year was 2018. And if it probably wasn't for a bad call on Maisha Hines-Allen getting blatantly hacked and a foul not getting called at the end of regulation against Mississippi State, Louisville goes on to play Notre Dame in the championship game, a team that they had beaten twice that year. 2009, 2013, they played a UConn team that wasn't losing. Breanna Stewart was some of the best. That 2013 to 2016, 4-year period was the best 4-year period from any program in college sports history. Let's just go ahead and say it. Breanna Stewart and that team, they were not losing games, especially not in the NCAA tournament. 2022, South Carolina, although they aren't on that UConn level, they've lost 2 games all year. They're clear-cut the best team in the country. So you have to take it with context. Should there be some criticism at times? Yeah, I think that throughout his career, I think that Louisville's lost some games that they should have won. I think the players, sometimes they deserve criticism as well. I'm not saying that they don't. I'm just saying that you can criticize them rightfully while also not being 100% hyperbolic and trying to make a hot take just to have a hot take. I get it's 2022. Having a hot take is popular nowadays. I'm just asking you all to look at this in a, stepping back and looking at this from a whole big picture standpoint of what he's been able to do here at Louisville. And I think that we're, a good amount of us are being ungrateful for that. But I digress. That's the end of my rant. I apologize for rambling on. I just kind of had to come out there and say that, this episode talked about, the loss of South Carolina, giving a shout out to the 3 seniors leaving and talk about why we need to stop trying to discredit what Jeff Walz has done in his career here at Louisville. On tomorrow's episode, we are going to discuss L. Ellis deciding to return, Matt Cross looking to entering the transfer portal, while also probably doing a mailbag segment. I want to take this time to tell you about Locked On NFL Draft, which you should make your second listen of the day because Locked On was your first. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL to life every day with inside analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. But that's going to wrap up this Monday edition of the show. Everyone have a great day. Have a great week. And we will see you right back here tomorrow. Go Cards.